Hello, welcome to a reading vlog. I am about to be starting my 24-hour readathon with my patrons that I do every month for our Pokeathon gym. It is nearly midnight. I am about to be starting a new book, and I'm hoping to read a book in a day. That is the plan. Last time there was a gym for my Pokeathon Patreon readathon, I did a book in a day and I read one of my most anticipated reads of a long time, and I read The Fragile Threads of Power. I'll link that video somewhere. Today I am tackling my most anticipated read of maybe the last 4 years? Possibly my most anticipated read of the last 4 years. It is finally time for me to read Play of Shadows by Sebastien De Castell. I'm embarrassed that it's taken me this long, considering this actually came out a couple of months ago and I was sent an early copy, so I'm ashamed that I didn't get to this sooner, but this is my plan for today. I'm going to try and get through this whole book today. It's not huge, it's not tiny, but I know that devouring a book that I'm excited about in a day is my preferred way to do it. Oh, it's actually just under 500 pages. That makes this seem achievable. I know I love Seb's writing. I know I can fly through this. I'm so excited. This is book 1 of the Court of Shadows, which is the sequel series to the Greatcoat series, starting with Traitor's Blade. The Greatcoat series is one of my favourite series of all time, ever. Night Shadow is like my favourite book ever. And we now have the next series in that world. There is a prequel to this one, which is Crucible of Chaos, which I have read. So I am all ready and prepared to go into Play of Shadows. I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm mainly excited. It is now 11:56, so the readathon will be beginning in 4 minutes. I'm so excited to dive into this and finally meet Damulus. Is that his name? Damulus, yeah. I'm gonna meet Damulus, who is not a duelist. But he's gonna find himself in some duels, I feel. I'm so excited. Let's get going. I am about to take myself to bed. It is nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. And in those 3 hours, I only managed to read 53 pages, which is not ideal. But I have also had a phone call with my mum. My mum's currently in America at the minute and is 6 hours behind me time zone wise, so I haven't been able to speak to her much because work and sleep and stuff is all happening at different times. So I have spoken to my mum. I also got very hungry, so had some random 2 a.m. noodles and was doing sprints with my patrons as well. But I am now gonna take my book to bed and do the classic thing of fooling myself into thinking, yeah, I'm going to read a little bit before I go to sleep, and then not doing that at all. But so far so good. As expected, I'm enjoying it. I am finding it very quick for me to get into and have a high intrigue for what's happening with these characters. The little name drops from names that we know from the previous books I just adore. But I am very curious about what Damulus did on stage. I think it's quite obvious what he did, but I think it's supposed to be, and then kind of highlights how silly Damulus is, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to carry on reading though. Maybe in the morning. Maybe I will read a little bit in bed. I don't know. But that's where I'm going to go now. little legs down on this chair, don't I? Hadn't actually noticed that they were out. Anyway, this folds out, so they're the little legs when it becomes a bed. Anyway, not what we're here to talk about. It has been a while since I updated this vlog. This vlog has changed course. This vlog was going to be a book in a day for the gym, and I was going to read Play of Shadows all in one day. The day definitely got hijacked and that did not go to plan, so I actually ended up on the next day reading Play of Shadows. So I have finished this. So this is less of a reading vlog, more of a let's just get excited about Play of Shadows vlog, because I'm going to an event in London on Friday where Sebastien De Castell is talking. He's going to be with Taran Matharu, who's just released Dragon Rider. I'm very excited about that. So we're going to go and we're going to meet Seb again. So that's exciting. So this is also going to be a bit of a weekend in London thing. It's evolving. It's evolving because my day got hijacked. But it's mainly about this man. This book has become my favourite book of all time. Sebastien De Castell is my favourite author, we know this, and Night's Shadow from him, which is the second book in the Greatcoats world, has been my favourite book of all time for a really long time. And I didn't think anything was going to beat it. And then I read this weekend, and it has. I kind of hoped that it would, because this is again set in the Greatcoats world. This is the first book of the Court of Shadows, which is the secondary series of the Greatcoats. So there are characters from the Greatcoats that are mentioned in this. The politics at the end of the Greatcoats world, like the political landscape, how it concludes in that series, is how it is in this series. So if you want to read this but you haven't read the Greatcoats yet, it will spoil the Greatcoats for you. So maybe read that first. But beautiful, beautiful book, fantastic characters, and I loved a new element that we explored a little bit more in this. I love it when books do timey-wimey stuff, like when there's an alternate timeline or time travel or something like that. And when our main character in this is summoning a ghost of a dead duke, the timeline of that dead duke's world becomes important to our plot. So there was like a little sprinkling of timey-wimey stuff, which I loved so very much. But also, I loved how we paid so much closer attention to the Bardati in this. With the first series being all about the Greatcoats, it's all about the Greatcoats. But there are other orders in this world, like the Greatcoats are the Tratari, and they are all about, like, justice. And the Bardati are, like bards, and they send messages through their music, or their theatre, or any sort of performance, musical instruments, singing, things like that. And we pay a lot closer attention to the Bardati and how important they can be in a grand political plot. And it was so good. I don't know how much I can tell you without being spoilery. I really, really enjoyed this. The twists and turns at the end, the predictable twist that then twists into something else. I feel very strongly about this. I love it very much. It's definitely got 5 stars, now being my new favourite book. But my nails are just falling off. But yeah, 5 stars. Absolutely adore it. As I said, there's this timeline that comes into play. Our main character, Damalus, is a terrible swordsman and initially not a great actor. But yeah, when he accidentally summons the ghost of a dead duke, things get funky. There may be cause for rebellion, a bit of an uprising. There's some brutal scenes. There's some torturous murders, because it's Sebastien De Castell, of course there is. Heads up for that. But I loved it, and I loved how that scene in the book how, again, it tied to that different timeline that we had. I think that was my favourite part of this and why I've fallen in love with it so much. Because that timey stuff where it's like what's happening in present day links to what's happening in this timeline, wherever this timeline may be, and how it all interweaves and connects. I love that shit. And this had that shit. Oh, it was so good. Okay. I'm not gonna sit and gush too much because I don't know what to tell you. But I loved it. I'm sure the more I talk about this book, the more I will be able to articulate how much I love it. But for now, we're just going to leave it at that.
Love very
Wow. That's a gorgeous angle of all of Kat's chin. There is only one of them. It was big.
I've got a very round face.
When you do that, yeah.
Oh my god. That's going to be on the internet forever.
You know how whenever you do something stupid, I put it in the thumbnail as well?
Yeah.
Yep. They call me Moonface. Hello. I'm in a Waterstones with a sea of scenery. Anna Kathleen. I never call you Kathleen.
I know, that was weird.
It is just Kat. Because it's the event. I'm very excited. We've already seen him once. Gave me a hug. Oh, we love him. But yeah, thought I'd let you know that we're here because I'll probably try and get a couple clips on camera. Trying not to get people in the... I can't. There's people everywhere.
It's set in the world of the Greatcoats, which for those of you who haven't read the Greatcoats, you can leave now. How dare you? No, which is a swashbuckling fantasy series about these wandering judges who, who hear cases but periodically have to duel to enforce their verdicts. Sort of Three Musketeers meets Game of Thrones. And Play of Shadows is the first book in a new series of that in that world. So if you haven't read the first Greatcoats book, it's totally fine. You can just read it. You'll notice at no point so far have I said anything about the actual book. But it is called Play of Shadows, and it has 540 pages, I believe. So it's a goodly
What kind of paper is it printed on?
Oh, excellent paper. The Shadow prints on the finest paper. They kill 50 trees for each page. Just not because it makes it a better book. Just they don't like trees.
No. Why don't we just accelerate all of this climate nonsense?
Exactly. Yeah. Let's get to the other. Yeah, it's been going on a while, this climate thing. So we're just trying to let's get to the next act. They're very fast-paced publishers. Anyway, sorry. So it's set. But the conceit behind Play of Shadows is if you've ever been in a theater, I have a kind of fondness for actors. I used to choreograph sword fights for a living for a brief part of my life. And so I got to be sort of in the theater. And when people say there's a magic to the theater, there really is. And as audiences, we sometimes see it where sometimes you're watching an actor on stage and you just know something's happening. And it's not just the script, it's not just the play, there's something happening. And so Play of Shadows is about the idea that what if certain actors called varistors actually sometimes channel the spirits of the historical characters they're playing on stage. And so Play of Shadows tells the story of Damolas Shadowmountain, the grandson of two Greatcoats, but who is himself not entirely the bravest person you've ever met, who flees a judicial duel and hides out in a theater by joining a theater company. And unfortunately for him, even in a bit part, goes on stage and accidentally channels the spirit of the most notorious villain in the duchy's history and blurts out on stage something that appears to imply that the greatest hero of that duchy was actually a horrible murderer, and civil war ensues.
Just take us through your writing journey and your career and how you got to be right here in this Waterstones right now. What does your writing journey look like? Let's start with you, Taryn.
Oh, okay. So 10 years ago, I think, I had just finished an internship at Penguin Random House, and I'd been pestering my boss to let me show some of my work to an editor there, and his response was no, definitely not. But why don't you put it on this website called Wattpad? There's 30 million people using it, and only 10 people have got book deals, but I'm sure it'll happen to you. And, he just wanted me to leave him alone, but I did do that. And within a month, the sample I shared of the book that would eventually become The Novice had been read 100,000 times, and I think within 4 months it had been read 1 million times. And then publishers became interested. Penguin actually offered to buy it and did not win the bid. But yeah, it was and since then I've gone on to be translated into 17 languages around the world. I think I've written about 10 books now, one a year, and I was fortunate enough that they've hit the New York Times bestseller list, and now Dragon Rider has hit the Sunday Times bestseller list at number 3, which is really cool.
Strangely, I've also been in the business for 10 years, exactly. And I guess we're the same age, that just makes sense. So I was in a rock and roll band, playing Brown Eyed Girl 3 times a night to make $250 a week, while being sued by the bass player of the band for control of a cover band whose net earnings were literally $1,000 a week, which is a pretty depressing state to be in.
Were you in a Beatles cover band?
Oh, I was in a Beatles tribute band too. Yeah.
Right.
I'm not saying we're better than Jesus or greater than Jesus. We smoke more. Anyway, it's been. I haven't done it for a while, but I used to have to. Every time I had to go on stage, I used to have to. You have to find a line to get your head back into the voice. So yeah, I was in a Beatles tribute with like the oldest, like least in shape Beatles impersonators imaginable. Anyway, but this was worse because this was this was before that when I was being sued, getting lawyers' letters which is a strange thing. And so I was depressed. So I went, did what I always do when life's confusing. I went to the library, and I found a box of cassette tapes. And although I am older than dirt, even then, nobody had cassette players. I had to find one. It was a box of cassette tapes, and it was called Let's Write a Mystery by Ralph McInerney. And you would stick the cassette tape in, and he would talk to you in this super dry science teacher voice, just be like, today we're going to write our protagonist. He should be a guy you'd like to have a beer with. And every day he's like, have you done your pages? And he would included in the box the manuscript that he wrote while you were writing your mystery. And it was the worst piece of shit I'd ever read. But Ralph McInerney was actually quite a legendary author. Like he wrote what was called the Father Dowling Mysteries, and I think there was a TV series from him. And he was a Catholic theologian of all things, and a professor at Notre Dame University. And the fact that he was willing to show just his ugly mess to people. Just kind of, it was the first time in my life somebody was able to teach me how to write. I'd always wanted to write, but I never could. So fast forward a few years, I wrote a book called Trader's Blade. At the time, it was going to be called Three of Traders. I wrote the first draft in 3 days, strangely, because there's a thing every year called the 3-day novel writing contest. So if anybody wants to be a novelist, that's a pretty low investment. Most people only write like a few thousand words in that time, but I ended up writing 44,000 words, and then a few years later, I turned that into a full manuscript, and then my wife seduced the president of Penguin at a... Sorry, that's not... She told me not to tell the story that way. My wife was at dinner, publishing dinner. She's a librarian, very high up in that world, and the president of
You're doing
Penguin...
a great job of digging out of it.
The president of Penguin Canada, who's a very good friend of mine now, Mike Bryan, was there, and they were talking, and he said, "Where's your husband?" And which I think, if that's not hitting on somebody, I don't know. And she said, "Oh, he's in the hotel room. He's writing query letters to get an agent." And he said, "Oh, my wife has just started an agency." And so Christina came back and said, "Great news! Like I met him, this guy, and his wife's got an agency, and he's really interested in." And I was like, "Nah, you're wrong. Like that's just he's just hitting on you." And then, but then they followed up, and Heather became my agent, one of my favorite people in the whole world, and got me a crazy book deal with the amazing people at Quercus, and that was a really long story that really didn't inform very much at all.
No, it's very interesting.
And so I've built very rigid magic systems and intricately explained magic systems, but sometimes for a book like Play of Shadows, I need to pull back from how much understanding there is of how it works in order to allow the dramatic elements to be at the forefront. But the essential idea, I think. So I worked on a particular play in London. It was a production of Richard III, and it was at the Bloomsbury Theatre, and I loved everybody who worked on that. They were just really great people. And the lead actor, who was the guy who got me the job to be fight choreographer, because we'd met in Canada when he was playing lead in Dangerous Liaisons production there. And he told the producers here, "Oh, you got to get this guy," which was just because he knew like I would hide all his mistakes in the sword fights. Dress rehearsal, he literally threw the axe and it hit 4th row center, which was actually really lucky because 5th row center there was a reviewer. But I remember like working with them and just the degree to which there's this intensity and seriousness about capturing something. And this production of Richard III, they were trying to make it a historical one. This is not to spoil Richard III for anybody here, but Henry Tudor and Shakespeare really did a number on Richard III. He really wasn't quite as monstrous as he's presented. And I remember my friend Zoltan, who was playing Richard III in this, and he's a method actor. So like literally before stage, you couldn't call him by his name. So I was playing Henry Tudor because I lied to the producers and said that it's tradition that a fight director always plays a role in this. I wanted an acting part too, and so they were kind enough to give me that one. And so I was playing Henry Tudor in that. So backstage, I'd always like leer at him and just go, "You're gonna fucking die." You know? But when he was on stage, like the actors are incredible. Like I don't think we understand how amazing what they do is that they are always trying to channel truth, right? And we use truth to mean lots of different things. And so I like the idea of that channeling of truth. And so I don't make it into as rigid or as specified a system. But the idea that takes shape is, I was kind of fascinated by the fact if you see a theater production, like it's very much so there are special costumes and special words people say, and special lights, and there's often candles, and it's like an occult ritual from the 19th century. And so I love the idea, what if there's this kind of magic, but it only works if you have all the ritual elements, and that's why you have to have a theater and a cast. But once you have that, if you have someone who has this greaser talent, sometimes they'll end up channeling that spirit, and suddenly the play goes in all these different directions. And so often Damelas is on stage, and he's seeing the past unfolding from the eyes of the person that he's playing, while on stage the other actors are having to keep up with what the hell he's doing because, of course, he goes off script right away. And so that was kind of the sort of the magic that I was playing with.
There's a very clever moment where before he sort of realised that he's capable of channeling this ability, he says, "That's not how it happened." And he doesn't really understand, even himself, why he has that strong conviction about it. And I thought that was very well done. But now that I've finished blowing smoke up your ass, let's go to Taryn.
To Jade, you're going to get my terrible handwriting. So nice to meet you.
I was
There we
saying,
Oh, thank you very much.
Close it.
Smile, smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
I'm going to write it.
Gosh, no. I've never seen this before.
How has he never seen that edition of his own book?
oh no.
Madness.
So it's been a while since that happened, and I never finished that vlog, so I apologise for that. It is now the next week, and I've just edited all of that footage up to this point and realised I didn't vlog my interaction with Sebastien at all, or Kath's interaction, or Cece's interaction. I just was chatting. So, sorry about that, but I did get my copy of Crucible of Chaos signed, or my third copy. There we go. Ta-da! And I did get my copy of Play of Shadows, again, my third copy. Ta-da! And as always, he was lovely. And it was lovely to hear them chat. I am actually also very excited about this as well now. It was on my radar anyway, but then hearing Taryn talking about it and like the back and forth and how funny the event ended up being and stuff, like it's definitely bumped up a little bit. And I did get it signed, although you've just seen him sign it. And then he did a little, I stopped recording and he was like, "Oh, you're going to put it on YouTube?" And I was like, "Oh, I've stopped recording, hold on, do it again, hold it up." And which is when I then was like, smile and wave. So there was that. But it was a really funny event. I very much enjoyed. The chair of the event was also very funny, and also an author, and I can't remember his name. He's the author of Perilous Times, but I can't remember his name. I apologise, but he was also funny as a chair. It was a really nice chat, and there was lots of laughs, and it was a good time, as it always is. That was the event, and that was that. And I think I did get in the footage of Sebastien talking, him kind of explaining this as well. And he did say, if you don't want to read the first Greatcoat series, you can start with this. And obviously I've said, don't do that. I will just add some context to that. If you don't want to read the first Greatcoat series at all, and you just want to start with this and you don't want to backtrack, that is okay. Like, you won't miss anything. It's just if you want to read the Greatcoat series and this, you should read that first. Just to avoid any confusion. Like, it will spoil the first series, but if you don't read the first series at all, like, this will still make sense to you. It's fine. So just to clear that up, because I do get a lot of people ask me about, like, oh, what's the best way to start with Sebastien De Castell's books? Which series should I start with? Which book should I start with? And people have asked if I would do, like, a video on a reading order. I don't think that's necessary for a whole video for a reading order of Seb's books. So I will just let you know here and now. My go-to starters would be either Spellslinger, if you want YA, Traitor's Blade, if you want gruesome adult, The Malevolent Seven, if you want wizards. They are your 3 starting points, and I think out of those 3, it doesn't matter where you start. Any of those is a good option. But if you're doing the Greatcoats world, Traitor's Blade, Night's Shadow, Saint's Blood, Tyrant's Throne, Tales of the Greatcoats, Crucible of Chaos, Play of Shadows. Spellslinger world, we've got the Spellslinger series, and then we've got the Argosy series as well, the Farius Parfax series. It doesn't really matter which way round you do that. I did it in publication order, so all of the Spellslinger books and then the Farius Parfax series, the Argosy books, just because that's when they came out. But the Argosy books are a prequel to the Spellslinger series. It follows Farius before she is who she is when we meet her at the beginning of Spellslinger. But it doesn't matter which way round you do those series. You will be fine either way. And then for Malevolent Seven, it is unrelated. There will be more books in that series, but currently that's just book 1 of a new series with new magic, unrelated to the others. So there's my Sebastien De Castell reading order information for you. Do with that what you will. But yeah, my new favourite book. I have been thinking about it since I finished it, and I've debated rereading it already. I have just finished my reread of The Greatcoats as well, which makes me even more interested in another reread of Play of Shadows. Maybe I will find myself rereading Crucible of Chaos and Play of Shadows both sometime in the not so distant future, even though I've read them both for the first time fairly recently. I love. But this, yeah. New favourite, absolutely. Also, I mentioned in the video that my nails were messed up and I got them done. Unrelated, but thought I'd just point it out. But yeah, 5 stars. Love this. Love Sebastien De Castell. Absolutely no surprises. And little shout out to Dragon Rider as well, that I'm quite excited to dive into at some point. So there we go. That is this video. Thank you ever so much for hanging out with me. And Seb, as we got a little snippets of the interview there as well. Hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you in whatever comes next, which honestly I don't know what is. But I'll see you then. Bye!